email and WhatsApp, but my name is Julie. I'm the founder and director of Guns and Rain based in Johannesburg. And we're thrilled this morning to have Tuli with us in Windhoek, with some of her art behind her as well. And we thought maybe what would be the best way to do this is just to share the catalog for the fair, and then Tuli is going to kind of speak to some of the works and tell us a bit about her process and her thinking for this body of work. So I'm going to share my screen and hand over to Tuli. And Tuli, thank you for making time for us. It's really fantastic to have this time with you. I'm just going to go back to the beginning here. Let's start with this one. Okay, can you see my screen, Tuli?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. Okay, Tuli, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Okay, I'm excited to talk about my process with this work. I just want to say all the stuff that are in this body of work, like the calabashes, the combs, the dolls, the fishing traps, everything, or like most of the stuff that I've used are actually from my own personal collection. It's stuff that I own. And the only thing that I don't own is the, unfortunately, is one of those, the original fertility dolls that are unfortunately, you are like, we are unable to have them in the northern part of Namibia because nobody makes them anymore. But everything else that is part of, like, is featured in this artwork, they're all part of my personal collection. It's just that I keep collecting and stuff that I use for, like, also in the performances, like when I'm doing the performances. So, well, let's talk a little bit about the first image or the first artwork with the calabashes. Well, many, like, way back in time when the people in the northern part of Namibia, they always have these ceremonies whereby they will like give thanks to the ancestors, and they will thank them for example, if they have like a wonderful, like a beautiful, a good harvest, they will always have these ceremonies. And one of the ceremonies that they had was the Omalodu festival, or the making of the traditional beer festival. And what they will do is that the women would always go to the graves of their ancestors, and they will always pour a little bit of the malt on the graves. And the reason for this was that they will like give things to their ancestors and to share a little bit of the malt with them, and to ask them that they'll have like a success brew. And of course, it was always so exciting for them, and that they always acknowledge the ancestors in the process, whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's, I don't know, like working the land, making, cultivating the mahangu, and planting the mahangu seed, they will always acknowledge their ancestors. And one of the important one, of course, was the brewing of the beer. That was so central for them, because of course, you can't have a festival without having traditional beer and having the porridge. Like, it was mainly the porridge and the traditional beer. So this piece is paying homage to that, to the act of going to the graves and sharing the traditional beer with the ancestors, and just to say thank you for a good harvest. And also they will still use a different kind of sorghum that they will also plant to make this beer. So it was important for them to say thank you, because they use the malt, or I mean the sorghum that they use. They planted themselves and they harvested it, and it's only fair to go to give some to the ancestors and to say thank you. So, well, this one is again about offerings. You cannot have a meal, you cannot have the mahangu meal, or it's kind of like also saying a prayer before eating, like it's like now in Africa, or wherever you go in Africa, or also in the West, especially for the people that are Christian, they always pray before having a meal. So with this piece is again an offering some of the mahangu meal or the before you start eating to the ancestors, and again to say thank you for a good harvest, and that the children are well, or the children are being fed, the children are having a they're having a meal. And in this piece I also use the fertility dolls, and these fertility dolls I made myself. I had like a performance and I needed to have fertility dolls. So they are from a makalani plant, or like a makalani nut. It's a tree that grows in the northern part of Namibia, and sometimes the nuts will fuse together, and there will like be two nuts that are fused together, and so they kind of look like a doll. And what we do in the northern part of Namibia, you have to make like a little dress for it, or a little skirt, and you put a string of beads around it. And of course, traditionally you get these fertility dolls when you are a little girl from your father. And I used to play with this when I was young also. I got from my grandmother. And then the story goes that in the case there's a fire in the village or in the homestead, the first thing that they will rescue will be the fertility dolls, because they were so important, because they represent what will become your family. It's like the more fertility dolls you have, of course, the more kids you will have one day. So this is kind of like, this piece is actually telling the story now of how this, I don't know, it could be a head of the family is sitting and he's having this meal with his children. But before they start eating, they have to say thank you. They have to give a bit of the porridge to the ancestors again, and just say thank you. We are eating our mahangu crop. Thank you for a good harvest. So and it's very strict still today. Like before we eat a meal in the northern part of Namibia, of course now people pray. They will say a small prayer, like a Christian type of prayer, and just say thank you. And before everybody can start eating, there's always a small prayer, and then everybody starts eating. And we all still sit around like that, where you have your meal like right in the middle, and everybody else is sitting around this meal, and then we all eat from one, from these two plates with the porridge and the sauce. Could be fish sauce or meat, and then we all eat together. So this is very much what we currently do. We still do this in the northern part of Namibia. And this one about the fishing trap. This is very much similar to the, like the English idioms, where they would talk about that, like when they're saying, if you give a man a fish, or like if you teach a man, you have to teach him. If you teach him how to fish, you're just teaching him the skill. Or like if you give him a fish, you only feed him for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, he can feed himself for the rest of his life. So this piece is very much the same to that idiom, because in Oshibambo it means exactly the same. That if you have a fish trap, then you can fish all your life, and you can actually feed your family for the rest of their lives. And like just like when we were talking about the rainy season, we are waiting for the rainy seasons, because like once it starts raining, we take out all our fishing traps, and we go to the Oshanas, and we fish. We still do this in the northern part of Namibia. And so if you have that fishing trap, whenever it rains, you have food at the table, and you can feed your family with that. And so this is just talking about that, the activity of fishing whenever it's during the rainy seasons. And of course, I collected the fishing traps. Some of them I got from when I went to Caprivi. When I went to that side of Caprivi, they do a lot of fishing there, and they also make the fishing traps. And of course, I also use them in my performances. Sometimes I would wear it as a hat, or as, I just put them around. If I'm doing a performance, and I would do like a little shrine, and I also have them around my shrine. So yeah.
And Tuli, can you also just speak about the images that are in the work of the human figures? Can you speak a little bit about that as well? Who are these figures, and what do they represent for you?
Well, the figures, the model in these figures, in this art, is obviously me. I use myself as the model, and of course, I'm wearing this raffia outfit, like a raffia skirt, and I just tied a piece of cloth around my upper body, and I'm doing all these different actions, like from holding holding a comb and having firewood on top of my head, and it's kind of like trying to talk about, or to have to showcase the different activities and labors that, especially women, that the work that the women are doing in the northern part of Namibia. It's like just this daily work that women do, like going to fetch firewood, going to, cooking a meal and eating a meal with the children, you know, harvesting some. In this case, I just used leaves because I couldn't find like a thing to use that to represent harvesting, but and I thought the leaves, in a basket, and I'm like shaking them about. That kind of also represent working in the Mahang field, especially during the harvest time. There's a lot of work going on, and of course, it's again the women that are doing the work, and also the cleaning and the sweeping of the homestead, and of course, the comb also represents the task that involves plaiting the hair, for example, and beautifying yourself. And it's always that someone, like another young lady, will do your hair for you, and they'll have like a comb, and they'll do these lines they'll part your hair, and before they do the plaits. So it's just like, and usually whenever the women are doing the hair, that's like the time when they can relax a bit, and they have time to actually beautify themselves, because throughout the day you are doing all these activities, like pounding the mahangu, like cooking and sweeping and fetching the water, going to look for firewood so you can cook a meal at night. So I'm just kind of like recreating the kind of work that women do. And of course,
we've also just got another question coming in from Klaus, asking about the fact that you're using masks as well in your costumes. And can you talk a bit about that? And have you chosen any particular masks? He's referenced, for example, the Mwana Poor mask of the Chokwe, and he's wondering if there's a specific reason for using that mask. Have you used the same mask for all of the works or not? Do they change? Maybe you can talk about that.
I didn't change anything. Like, I use the same mask throughout the artworks, and the reason for this is that, sometimes you, as women, of course, when you're doing this work, sometimes there's a feeling of being invisible, like a feeling of invisibility. And I think, a lot of times the mask kind of hide who you are, your true self. And I actually borrowed this mask at a little courier shop in town. I was looking for something, but this one really caught my eye, and I thought it was just perfect if I could just put that on my face to represent the feeling of being invisible. And I didn't really, for me, it was not like, I wasn't thinking that, oh yeah, it's from a different tribe, like the Chokwe tribe. It doesn't really matter, because in Africa, masks are so important to us that you can literally make a mask out of anything, and it doesn't. For me, it doesn't really matter if it's from another part of Africa, and just because I'm Ovambo doesn't mean that I can't use it. But in this case, it just means it represents being invisible as a woman in a certain village, but because all you do most of the time is like you work, and people don't, sometimes they fail to see you as who you are, but yeah, you're just working most of the time.
Thanks, Tuli. That's really insightful. We have a few minutes left, and maybe you could speak to briefly about these dolls and how they differ or not from the other fertility dolls. So if you can cover that, and then if you could also speak about the presence of the chickens and the roosters, that will be good.
Well, this fertility dolls, these were actually the original Wamba fertility dolls that they used to make, but unfortunately that art is gone. It's completely gone. There's no one in the north that can actually remake these dolls, and most of them are also taken out of, out of the country. They are probably somewhere in some private collections or some collection somewhere. I don't know, maybe at the Christian missionary museum in Finland. Maybe they are there. I don't know. I'm searching to see where could some of them be. So now we end, no, because nobody makes this anymore. We are left with the ones that are made from the two, with the two the two nuts that are fused together. So now those are the popular ones now, or those are the current ones that we use. But these ones are completely gone. Nobody knows the craft of making them, unfortunately, which is so sad. But yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot in this work about loss, loss of tradition, memory, specific cultural things. And, for me, the fact that you've brought these symbols back in multiples in your work, for me, that really symbolizes a kind of a calling back of that past. It's like you're trying to sort of recreate it in the present. You kind of want to bring it back stronger than ever in a way. So let me just move on to the work with the chickens and the roosters. There are actually two of these works, but I know that Minnie will be particularly interested to hear you talk about these.
Yeah, these chickens, well, these chickens are important because in Wamboland, or with the Awambo, they had like two types of chickens. There were the ones that you could consume, that could be eaten like at special ceremonies, like if you're having like a child naming ceremony, or when you're in the ceremony of introducing a child to the family, they will always like slaughter a chicken with the porridge. And so they will have like two kinds of chickens: the ones to be consumed at special ceremonies, and then the ones that are used in rituals. And they will always do the rituals like just before sunset, because the idea is that the bad spirits that the Namunganga or the healer is taking out of the sick person should go down with the sun. It should go down with when the sun is setting, and that spirit is, they will like sit off with the sun, not to return anymore. So unfortunately, again, that's also gone. Like today, I guess we just eat most of the chickens, like especially the traditional Ovambo chickens, because they're free range. They run all over the place, and of course, they're so delicious that we eat that a lot with the porridge. Like sometimes I'll also have a craving for traditional chicken, and I will go to the other side of town just to buy the traditional chicken. Yeah. But unfortunately today also, who's doing the rituals today? Everybody believe in a God now, believe in the Christian God, and the god Kalunga Kanangobe, or god of Nangobe fell away, and the only person that remained as a godly, something that to believe in as a god, is Kalunga, which means God, which is just a normal God, like a Christian God. And unfortunately, Nangobe fell off, and nobody, I don't know if people, it's only maybe the old people now that still remember who's Nangobe, or God of Nangobe. But everyone else just say Kalunga as God. So it's interesting that you know, that whole shift when the Finnish missionaries came to Namibia and everybody had to change. You know, it was this exodus to the mission stations, and everybody walked in their beautiful hairstyles and elaborate hairstyles and beautiful costumes, just to step out with clean shaven heads and wearing a simple cloth. And it's interesting how everybody was not only changed on the outside, but also from within, to start believing in this new God. And but they have to also make sure that they're showing it also in a physical way, whereby they cut off the hairstyles, and they have that wearing this church like a nun. Now you become a nun in a way, and you dress as a nun, and we even they even started talking about that they believe in this new God, and that they are Christians now, and they are also baptized, and they got new names. You know, they get rid of their traditional names, and now they get these Christian names. And yeah, and today this is how we live in now. You know, you have your traditional name, but you also have a Western name, and that's because of the influence of Christianity, and I guess the work of the missionaries.
Oops. Thanks so much, Tuli. This has been really, really fascinating and insightful. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I don't know if anyone wants to ask questions. If you do, you're welcome to unmute and speak. It's possible I might have to unmute you. I'm not sure, but let's see. And otherwise, you can also type them in the chat box. But yeah, it's been amazing to present this body of work at 154 this week. One of the only art fairs going ahead physically this year, the whole of this year. And yeah, it's been a great experience for us to do that. It's been very strange for us to be sitting on the other side of the world from the fair, but these new hybrid models of working are going quite smoothly. Okay, so we don't have any questions coming in. Tuli, did you want to talk at all about your use of materials, why you choose the mix of materials that you do? And yeah, Minnie is asking about the use of resin in your work. You know, why do you use resin? Can you talk a bit about how you use it and the blowtorch? That would be great.
Well, I use the resin in my work because that helps to fuse the mahangu meal onto the canvas. So if without the resin, it won't really stick. And I mean, using glue won't actually do it, because it will just fall apart. So the resin helps to fuse the mahangu onto the canvas, and then the blowtorch kind of cooks it a bit. It cooks the mixture of resin. It helps to fuse everything together. And I like to actually sand it down so that it's nice and smooth. Like when you look at the surface of the canvas, you can see that everything is nice and smooth because I sand it down, but you can still see that the mahangu is still there, and it creates these beautiful textures on the canvases. And I think that's why I really love to use the mahangu in there. And you know, it's also a paying homage to the work of the ladies or the women in the villages that are all every year. You know, even me, I go to the village and I have to work the land, and I have to like plant the mahangu. So it's again like cooking the porridge, but on the canvas in a way. So the blowtorch is, yeah, I'm cooking.
That's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great.
So,
well, I think we'll wrap up there, but thank you so much, Tuli, for your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Klaus and Minnie and Shutong, for joining us. We are going to have a recording of this, which we will also share for anyone who's interested. And this has been wonderful to get some insight into this particular body of work and all the rich symbolism that it includes. So thank you so much, Tuli, once again. Thank you to those who joined us. And we look forward to staying in touch and seeing you online soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.